What's up, everybody? It's TR with Earth Angel Mushrooms. It's been a while, and I don't have my selfie stick with me. Sorry. But I said I would make a video on these. So here I am, gonna make a video. Let me set my camera down here, get back here. First, a couple things. Maitake are extremely difficult. I don't have a full grasp of Maitake and the ins and outs like I do on shiitake or oyster or some of the other easier varieties. What I will say is I'm growing about 750 pounds a week now, so I have a little bit of a grasp. I have the tiger by the tail. Let's see if I can keep hanging on. I debated whether I was going to make this video and share via YouTube what I know so far. And some of the other Maitake growers that are my colleagues are like, I don't want to share any of this. I don't want to share any of this. But up till this point in my mushroom growing career, me sharing stuff has only benefited me. And so I feel that by helping everybody else out, it's going to help me as well. So here we go. Maitake. I am growing exclusively one strain known by M4 or 9827. Originally I got the culture from my good buddy at Hi-Fi Mycology, Corey Nelson. And I was making my own spawn. Now I'm buying G1s from Cap'n Stem. Still making my spawn, but buying G1s from the guys at Maine Cap'n Stem. Saves me a ton of time. So if you're gonna buy spawn, G1s, whatever, Maine Cap'n Stem, I still sell spawn as well. So let's get back on track. 9827 or M4. You'll hear it go by both names. And again, I'm prefacing, I don't know everything about Maitake. I know a little bit. I'm still learning almost every week something about them. But there are some consistencies that I do know. So let's start off. I'm using a mix of spawn that's sawdust and grain. Shiitake and Maitake both love sawdust in the spawn. So I add ends up being about 10% or so on both of those species. So it's millet, wheat, and about 10% sawdust. It's a lot of sawdust, but they love it. So anyway, let's go look at some blocks here. So here I have a progression of blocks, starting with colonized. You can see starting to get a little ring around it, dark ring, and I'll go into more detail with these. And then it's growing up the bag. And then I have some over here. I'm in the grow room right now. I've switched up my grow room specifically for Maitake, and I'll get to there. Look at that rack. Oh yeah. It looks nice. Anyway, so it takes between 6 and 8 weeks. I'm using 10-pound blocks. I'm growing on sawdust and 35% soybean hulls. The moisture content I shoot for is 57.5. 57.5. It's a little bit on the dry side, but that's what I go for every single week. And as you can see per this room, and I'll show you some blocks that are ready to pick. Let me shut that off real quick so you guys can hear me. I'm going to go over here. It's my new humidification system right here. Got the air atomizing nozzle now. You can see it right up there. It's new. You guys haven't seen that yet. So I'm going to drop this down to turn it off, and then I'll turn it back up whenever I'm done with the video. Okay, so I'm growing on sawdust and soybean hulls, but it is 35%, 57.5% moisture. And a lot of you guys are like, well, that's bone dry. A moisture percentage is dependent on your sawdust, right? So I could go really in depth on moisture content of substrate and how it differs from sawdust to sawdust based on how big the particle size is of a given sawdust. So for those of you growing on pellets, 57.5 would be bone dry. For fresh sawdust, depending on the mill you're getting it from and the size of the particles of sawdust themselves, it's just right for mine. So based on the mill that I get the sawdust from and how it holds water. So imagine like comparing peat moss to sand. Peat moss is going to hold a massive amount of water, but if you put that same amount of water in sand, it's going to feel like waterlogged, draining water to the bottom. The same thing applies for our substrate. So if I give you a certain moisture content, it might be different, a little bit different for your sawdust or your substrate. So I'm doing 10-pound blocks. Of course, I'm using my autoclave. So anyway, we're inoculating them. I use 6-pound bags of spawn, and I inoculate about 25 10-pound blocks per 6-pound spawn bag. And again, my spawn is millet, wheat, and sawdust for maitake and shiitake. So then I inoculate them, put them in incubation. In incubation holds about 68 degrees in there. And then, so here's one that's just dense white, 1224. So what is that, 3 weeks? Ish, 3 weeks, and then you'll start seeing the next phase. And Jordan Gent of Texas Fungus coined the term spider eyes. And it starts to get dark all over the top, and you probably can't see the spider eyes on there, but they look like spider eyes. There's little dark water droplets on all of the masses of mushrooms. So what they're doing is they're starting to fruit in the bag. And then, of course, from here, as long as the conditions are correct, they keep growing up the bag. The beautiful thing about maitake is they're already in the bag. We don't have to create any additional environment changes for them because they got 100% humidity and they have what they want. One of the huge things in being successful or semi-successful growing maitake is when you fruit them. When you fruit them. There's like a magic week or so, and if you go over that week, then they grow a little bit differently in here. If you go under that week, there's a huge chance that they will abort. So the biggest thing is identifying that week of when they're ready. So before I tell you that stuff, what you will have in incubation to your grow room is you'll have rollover blocks that should have been ready, but they're actually ready a week late. And then in turn, you'll have other blocks that are ready a week early that you bring in. So you have this constant shuffling of blocks based on when they're ready. So you'll have early blocks, you'll have your main blocks, you know, the huge chunk of them that are actually on schedule, early ones from the next week, and then you'll have blocks that are stragglers that you have to roll over to the next week. Because if you bring them to the grow room, they'll either abort or they'll grow and not look correct, or they'll be in there forever, even if you can get them to fruit correctly. So this was a rollover block. This was started on 12/1. This is the week that predominantly all of my blocks in here that are fruiting right now are on. So this block got rolled over to next week. So it'll be cut open next week. And I'll get to how I cut open the bags. So the biggest thing you're looking for, and I say about 6 weeks. So it's actually like 6, 7, 8 weeks, depending on the block. And it's all block dependent. It's the only thing we're abiding by is what the block is telling us. How is it growing? How are we going to get this to fruit? Well, we want to listen to it. We are, it's the master. We're the slave. We're doing what it tells us to do. And as long as we do what it wants, it will give us maitake. So you can see that it is growing up the bag. right? Up the sides of the bag. They love to go around the ring of the bag. Why? I don't know. And a lot of people don't like them to fruit around the bag. They want to get one big Maitake. I want that too, and I'm working on that part to figure out how I can get that. But right now, I don't know that. I don't know how to get one beautiful Maitake. I know how to get lots of smaller, beautiful Maitakes. So, it's growing up the side of the bag, and I wish you guys could really see inside the bag, but you can't. But it grows from, of course, the spider eyes to all, it starts growing up the side of the bag, making these big like balls, knobs. And the magic time to fruit them is when they are starting to make fingers. So when they go from knobs to just barely starting to make fingers. When they start to make fingers, that is the go ahead. So this was a rollover block, and you can see that it's not making fingers like the other ones. So now let me grab a block that we did freeze. And you will be able to see it. So I'll grab the camera here. We brought these in yesterday. Hopefully it's focusing. See how there's fingers? I call them fingers. 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 See how there's all kinds of little fingers in there? Have little water droplets. So let me put this back down. So you're looking for fingers. It's going to fruit in the bag until it makes fingers. These were literally cut open yesterday. I'll put that back. One thing that you're looking for when you bring them into the grow room is literally overnight, within 12 hours, those fingers will start getting dark. And there's a noticeable difference. Hopefully you saw it in the video, but there's a darker margin around the tops of the mushrooms. That's always a good sign. Sorry I don't have my selfie stick. So we went through the progression, went through the temperature, how I inoculate them, what I'm using, 35% soybean hulls, 65% sawdust. So when to cut them open. We're letting them grow in the bag. First we're seeing all white block, then it starts getting dark. Then we start seeing spider eyes, and we start seeing these knobs grow up. And then when we see those fingers start going out, then we're going to cut the bag. So I started by cutting the bag all the way off. And that works fine, but you don't get the best yield. They don't like lots of airflow. So when you can block that airflow with the bag up around the top, you can see that we're cutting the bag up high. And then we cut a slit here that when they start to frond out, they can push the bag on their own. And that saves them from getting hit with the air and keeps the moisture on the block. So let's pull up a good looking Maitake. So when they go in the grow room, it's going to happen lightning fast. Lightning fast. And this block has been in the grow room for a week. 1 week. So we went from fingers to that, or to any of these, in a week. And I left this rack in here. I should have picked a lot of these yesterday. And here I'm trying some other stuff. Down here, look at this one. That is just, oh yeah, beautiful little hen. Beautiful. So I have a rotation that they're in the grow room for a week, and the next round comes in. That allows me to clean this room immaculately. I do not grow any other mushrooms. They don't like to grow with other mushrooms. Do I know why? No. But I do know that they don't like to grow with other mushrooms. So you saw my humidifier. I try to keep the humidity in the 90s, but not getting water to be on the mushrooms themselves. But I try to keep it high, low airflow, CO2 below 1,000. So I have a fan right behind me that's pulling off a preconditioning room. So I've set my whole grow up for these now, as opposed to my previous videos. I just try to keep the CO2 below 1,000, my humidity in the 90s. I want to keep it as high as possible, but not get lots of water on the mushrooms themselves. And temp, believe it or not, a lot of people think that they like really cool temperatures. They do not like cool temperatures. And this is one of the few mushrooms that I know of that you can get it warmer, like up to 70, and they're still good to go. Right now it's about 64 degrees, so in the 60s is where I'm trying to hang out, and even towards the upper end of the 60s. So, again, what we've gone over is what I know. And I only know one strain. I don't know multiple strains. I know this strain. I've stuck to this strain until I kind of figure stuff out. 9827 or M4. Those things are interchangeable. But it's ready to fruit in about 6 weeks. But it might be different for you guys. Just look for those fingers. I cut the whole top off the bag and cut slices down the sides. But the key is when it's ready. You're bringing it in when it tells you to bring it in. And there's one other thing. And this camera won't do these justice. These are floodlights. These are blinding. The camera doesn't do them justice, but it will. Looking towards you guys, it's almost blinding to me. There's a light response. I don't know fully how much light they need, but I do know that they need light, way more light than the other species. So about 6 weeks, but we're looking for the fingers, so it could be 6 weeks, 7 weeks, or 8 weeks. They're always it's like popcorn. It starts with a few, then most of it, then a few stragglers. That's exactly like Maitake. Lights, humidity, keep it as high as you can without getting lots of water on the mushrooms. CO2 below 1,000, temperature mid-60s, even to the upper 60s, and about a week in the grow room. I don't recommend growing other mushrooms with Maitake. They have some sort of sixth sense. This room is cleaner than any other grow room that I've ever had. I am anal retentive about keeping this thing clean. I think I covered everything. What I'm using, how I'm colonizing, how I'm fruiting, when I'm bringing them over, and this is what you get. So, hopefully I helped you guys understand Maitake better than you did before. Keep on growing mushrooms, stay motivated, sell those mushrooms, and we'll talk to you later.